All right, page 19, coherency. It would be good at this point to describe the way a real hologram is made so that you become familiar with this important concept. By coherency, we mean an order of a certain kind. In this case, we shall talk about coherent light, without which a good hologram cannot be made. The most popular source of coherent light is a laser. The first important aspect of a laser light is that it produces light of a single frequency. We all know that our sun sends us light that can be broken down by a prism into a spectrum containing all the colors of the rainbow. A laser produces light of just a single color from that rainbow, which we call monochromatic light. In addition, the light emitted by the laser is coherent or goes in step. By that, we mean that all the light coming out of the source is moving forward in even flat fronts, figure 10. This makes it possible for the laser light to stay in a narrow beam over very large distances. There is a better way to describe coherency. Suppose we have a parade and a company of soldiers marching in military fashion down a main street. They are moving along 10 abreast, very carefully aligned in each row. The distances between the rows are fixed, which is analogous to the even distances between the crests of light waves. That they are carefully aligned abreast, none of them sticking out of the line, is analogous to the light being in phase or in step. In short, the row of soldiers is analogous to the light emitted by the laser beam. Suppose now that a slip-up occurs and one of the soldiers, not watching his fellows, shifts out of his row, moves forward, and steps on the heel of the fellow in front of him. The latter panics, thinking that he is lagging behind, and he jumps forward and bumps into the fellow ahead of him. Now this starts a general panic in which the soldiers, bumping into each other, disrupt the nice even width of the moving column. The neat column diverges, broadens, then opens up completely in great disorder, in spite of the fact that their commander is blowing his whistle, tearing at his hair, and using strong language to get his men back into line. What we have learned from this disastrous parade is that a beam of light can stay in a narrow beam similar to a laser's beam only as long as it is coherent. When coherency is lost, the beam will tend to expand rapidly, just as will the beam of a regular flashlight. The hologram. We have seen before that information can be stored by an interference pattern of waves. To have interference, we must have at least two interacting components, and here is how it is done, figure 11. The laser light beam is split into two components by a half mirror, that is, a semi-transparent mirror. This allows part of the beam to continue undisturbed while part of it is deflected to another mirror. Both narrow beams are spread open by lenses. The upper beam, which we shall call the reference beam, arrives at a photographic plate after an eventless flight. Since no event of note has occurred on its way to the plate, it proceeds then to deposit its imprint on the film. The other half of the beam we shall call the working beam. This beam's trip had an event. It had encountered on its way an object, in this case an apple, that it had illuminated and with which it had interacted. We don't consider encounters through mirrors and lenses as worthwhile talking about. The working beam will then be reflected from the apple and fall on the film. There it will meet its twin, the reference beam, and will tell it all about its experiences with the apple. Neither of them suspect that their interaction is being recorded on film. The interaction between the two beams will cause ripples to form between them, which will form the interference pattern we are already familiar with, since the light waves will behave in this case the same way as do water waves. However, these ripples do not at all resemble the shape of the apple, but as we already know, the ripples in the photographic emulsion do contain information, and that information can be elicited from the film by illuminating the exposed film with the same light used in making the hologram. As we do that, we shall see the apple appear suspended in midair and looking very three-dimensional and real. We could be easily deceived when reviewing an image constructed from a hologram that we were seeing We could be easily deceived when reviewing an image reconstructed from a hologram that we were seeing the actual object. Note that the important part of holographic image making is the interaction of a reference beam, a beam that is pure, virgin, and untouched, with a working beam which has had some experiences in its life. The magnitude of these experiences is being measured against the reference beam, which serves as a baseline for comparison. Our whole reality is constructed by constantly making such comparisons. Our senses, which describe our reality to us, are making these comparisons all the time. Unfortunately, our senses, having no absolute reference line, must generate their own relative reference line. But whenever we perceive something, we always perceive differences only. It would be useful to take one example from nature to see how such differences are put to use in a very obvious way. Take the bat, for instance. We all know that this little mouse-like fellow lives on insects he catches in flight. Since he is active at night, he has developed a sonar-like device that serves him very well and enables him to make a reasonably easy living. He has highly specialized structures in his head that allow him to emit a very high-frequency sound and to direct it in a fairly narrow beam. This is his reference beam. As this beam encounters a flying insect, some of this sound will be reflected back to the bat, figure 12. He picks up this echo, or can call it the working beam, and compares it to his original squeak or chirp. There will be a difference between the two, called the Doppler effect. And this difference tells the bat how far away the insect is and how fast it is flying relative to him. As the bat successfully closes in on the insect, the difference between the two frequencies, the emitted frequency and the echo, diminishes. When it becomes very small, the bat opens its mouth and swallows the echo. Some echoes, as the bat surely knows, are tastier than others. We see now that by appreciating the difference between two sounds or vibrations, one can get along quite well in life. There are many creatures that make a living by appreciating differences in sound. Porpoises, whales, and many others. We humans also utilize this technique in less obvious ways in color vision, hearing, etc. That's where I'm going to stop.